If you remember from my previous videos, this is my 2U right here, crypto server. It was running a dual Xeon. Then I upgraded it to a Ryzen 3950X. Let's go one step further. Time for EPYC. So recently we switched this over kind of as an experiment to a Ryzen 3950X, and it runs beautiful. We actually saved about 20 watts, but it was more of an experiment than it was a long-term solution to the older dual V2s that I had in here. Then came around ETC MC nodes, and yeah, I can run 6 nodes on that reliably with no problems because I'm maxed out on 128 gigs of RAM. That's all you can do on a regular Ryzen computer. So I resurrected temporarily, as janky as ever. Inside here is the old dual Xeon V2 motherboard. I got 9 nodes running on there right now. So I have a total of 15 nodes running between these two, and I don't want to keep it this way. So thankfully, thanks to partial sponsorship by DYNEX and having a little bit of money, I can now finally fully upgrade this to a first-gen EPYC with the ability to upgrade it to a second-gen EPYC in the future. Let's go check out the motherboard that's going in. So right now I have this motherboard in test mode. I have updated the BIOS to the latest version. I've updated the IPMI firmware to the latest version. And this is an H11SSL-NC motherboard. The NC versus the I gives me 8 SAS ports and 2 NVMe ports for U.2 drives. This is actually populated. On an I, it's not populated at all. So I'm probably not going to keep this M.2 on here. This was for testing, and I only got 16 gigs of 2133 DDR4 on here, just enough to get it started. For the active cooler, I am using a Dynatron A24 or A26. I'll link it down below, but it's meant for 2U EPYC. And underneath this, because I bought the motherboard and the CPU by itself from China, is a 7551P CPU that has 32 cores, 64 threads. Basically the top of the line single CPU socket EPYC they had for the first generation. Thankfully, this is revision 2.0 of the board. Revision 2.0 with the BIOS update can support second-gen Rome EPYC CPUs. So in the future, I can upgrade this to a 7442 EPYC CPU, which is 64 core, 128 threads. That's what you see a lot of people doing CPU mining on, is the second gen EPYCs, because the first gen, they suck, except for Veriscoin. They're great on Veriscoin, and they're great for regular general compute, which is what we're going to use it for. But I have an upgrade path. Now, for me, it's not a big deal, but for some people, it might be. With the H11SSL boards, even though they will support second gen Rome EPYC CPUs, you will still be locked down to PCIe Gen 3. This board does not support Gen 4. If you want that, you need to go up to the H12SSL series of Supermicro motherboards. I am definitely not running this in production with 16 gigs of 2133 DDR4 ECC memory. That would be absurd. So let's get these out and put in 256 gigs of DDR4 3200 megahertz RDIMMs ECC. These are also double rank, not quad rank. So let's go ahead and change that out. Isn't that a thing of beauty right there? All populate, all 8 DIMM slots, because the EPYC has an 8-channel memory controller, so you might as well use all the memory bandwidth. 256 gigs of RAM, more than enough to run all those nodes and all my regular crypto VMs and Dockers and everything else I want to run on there. Okay, so here is the current status of my 2U server with the 3950X CPU running everything. And right here, this is the 3.2 terabyte Samsung PCIe add-in card that has all my VMs on it. We're going to have to temporarily reuse this so we can get the data off and swap it onto those U.2s. But for right now, let's gut this whole thing out. And now we can take this motherboard and put it back to CPU mining. This time we have an I/O shield, so let's pop that in. And before we screw this in, let's make sure we have all the holes in the right spots. Perfect, I only had to move one screw. So we got our 3 fans right here, and we can plug them in at their respective fan headers. And 3. Still have 1, 2, there's another one around here somewhere. 1, 2, there's another one over here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there's 7 fan headers total on this motherboard. So now let's go ahead and temporarily reinstall our cache drive, so this way we can get the data off of it. Okay, so we got 24-pin motherboard. We have 8-pin EPS 12 volt for the CPU itself. It just fits. And we also have a little 4-pin over here in the corner for extra power for the PCIe slot. So we're going to plug one of these 2 in there. Once I get it turned the right way. There we go. And now you'll find this on Supermicro motherboards and their chassis. This is a 4-pin I2C, runs directly to the power supply. It's just so the IPMI can get power data. So that goes actually on this board. It's right next to the 8-pin EPS. So it's a little tiny. You can't see it right here, but it does plug in. If you're using this motherboard in an aftermarket chassis, don't worry, you don't have to connect this for proper operation. So that's almost all the electrical connections, but we're not done. We have to get rid of these old ones because these are SAS2 connections, and we got to change out this backplane so we can put the SAS3 one in there. So we got to take out all the drives in the front here. Okay, got it all blown out. So let's put the newer backplane in now. Okay, I don't know how much footage I lost because apparently my GoPro got too hot and it shut itself off. So the backplane's back in. The 3 power connectors, the Molex connectors, are back connected. And now we're going to swap over to the newer, what is these, 8647 connectors. These are SAS3 or NVMe connectors. Let me install that and let my GoPro cool down in front of a fan for a little bit. Okay, finally got the 2 NVMe drives in here. The problem I was having was one of my 3D prints for the 3.5 to 2.5 inch adapter wasn't exactly perfect, and it was offsetting the hard drive just enough so it wouldn't plug in. I got it in correctly after a little bit of trimming. So we are good to go. Let's go put it back in the server rack and get this thing turned on. No, wait, there's one more thing we forgot. Hold on. We can't do anything if we don't have a boot drive. We need this because this has my UnRaid, and the new board has a USB 3 spot right here. Ta-da! And I can still close the lid. That's my boot drive. Now we can take it over to the server rack and get this thing booted up. Okay, it is now up and running, and definitely a lot cleaner than my Plex server. I think I might need to dust this off next. Either which way, let's go to the desktop and see what I can do on the software, get everything set up again. And in the meantime, here's a quick advert from DYNEX, one of my favorite cryptos.
You know quantum computers, you know blockchain, but do you know both together? DYNEX was the first platform to create a neuromorphic supercomputing blockchain-based algorithm which solves real-world problems. And the best part? anyone can post a job, whether a company from the Global 2000, a machine learning job, or fintech and pharmaceutical. And if you don't want to program it yourself, get an expert directly at the marketplace. Run the job and be impressed by the fast result.
Okay, we are in. You can see it's an H11SSL-NC motherboard, and we have 256 gigs of RAM. Let's move on over to advanced CPU configuration. CPU 1 information. And there is your AMD EPYC 7551P 32-core 64-thread processor running at 2 gigahertz at 687 millivolts idling. There we go. Okay, so they are 3200 megahertz RAM, but it's only running at 2667, because I think that's all the 7551P can handle. When I upgrade next year to a 7442, or whatever the heck the model was, 7440, I'm not going to remember the model off the top of my head. Either which way, that one probably supports 3200, so I'm good. And there's UnRaid. Perfect. Should start booting here in a second. Cool. 2 days later from the last section, everything is now configured correctly. We can see here's our Supermicro H11SSL-NC version 2 motherboard, our AMD EPYC 7551P CPU, 32 cores at a base clock of 2 gigahertz. Look at all those threads, and they're happy. RAM, usable size 251.8. It's 256 gigs of RAM. If we look at it, with everything running right now, I'm only using 130 gigs right now. And you can see all 15 nodes running, the HiveOS A6 hubs running. All my other little VMs right now, they're not really doing anything. So I got them off. If we look at our drives, I have 4 10 terabyte spinners. One is acting parity, so I have 30 terabytes total available for long-term backup, array, whatever. It's protected, basically. Nothing that I really need for the VMs, and it's not meant to be fast storage. I also have another backup drive right here just for backing up the VMs. That is a 4 terabyte SSD, SATA SSD, so 500 megabytes a second max. Then I have the 2 NVMe U.2 drives here in a BTRFS RAID 0. So total size 7.7 terabytes, but a lot of throughput. And we can see the VMs accessing it. It's really not doing that much, and the temperatures are great. Speaking of which, let's go back to the dashboard again real quick. And if I scroll down here, after it's done populating the screen, you can see CPU temp only 126 degrees, and I have the fans ramped down. Actually, this fan is one of the case fans. This is another case fan, and this is a case fan. These two, I have the Noctua noise reducers. It basically is like a resistor in line. Works perfectly fine. Although I didn't have 3, so I have to order another one, and then it'll be nice and quiet. And this fan is compensating perfectly fine, keeping the CPU nice and happy at about a 25% load at 126 degrees Fahrenheit. Can't complain. Great. You can barely even hear. I actually hear the HVAC more than I do the server running. So that's it for this build. Thanks for watching all the way. Sometime next year, I will be getting a 7442. Was that the right number? I'm having a brain fart again. CPU, and upgrading this and seeing what we can really push this to. Any pertinent links to this video will be down in the video description below. This is coming out just before Christmas 2023, so Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year.